I was struggling. I was in a really bad place.
I found out that I wasn't legally married.
My feelings had died out and I was just suffering in that relationship.
Islamically, he already gave me the 3 talaqs.
I was desperate to get divorced, so Jav's helped us out a lot.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to another episode of Marriage Matters with me, your host, Javaid Iqbal. Now, this evening we're going to be joined by a lady who's done some great work in the community, who set up some absolutely brilliant organisations, and she's going to tell us all about them. I'm proud and honoured to say that we're joined this evening by Shahien Taj, OBE. Shahien, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Shahien. Thank you very much for joining us.
You're welcome.
Brilliant. Shahien, tell us a little bit about yourself. I mean, obviously, I know. Tell the viewers at home who you are, what you do, how you got into doing what you do.
Okay, so obviously my name is Shahien Taj. I was born and raised in Wales. I obviously, well, I think you can make it out. I'm Pakistani origin. My family come from the north of Pakistan. I'm the eldest of 4 siblings. I came into working particularly with women in the late 90s. There'd been a lot that happened in my personal life, but also I'd spent, I think I must have been in my mid-20s by that time. I'd spent a lot of time listening to women. I used to run a fabric shop. I used to sell fabric. I used to, sell designer outfits. And I was the only place at that time in Cardiff that was doing this. So I would have all sorts of women coming to see me from all ages, all backgrounds, Muslim, non-Muslim. And it was really sometimes painful to listen to some of the situations that the women would share. It was a bit like, I think I could compare it to what perhaps a hairdresser might go through on a daily basis. I mean, I wasn't cutting anyone's hair, but while these ladies and women and girls would come in and shop, maybe for a wedding, maybe just to, get something new, hearing some of the stories of family breakups and, marriages that they weren't sure about. It was really painful and really hard that particularly women just didn't have anywhere where they felt that they could speak openly and get some advice.
Right, and how did you get involved, or how did you set up Henna Foundation? What does the foundation do and specialise in?
Okay, before I say that, actually, sadly, due to the issues with the third sector at the moment, lack of funding and manpower, we're actually wrapping up Henna Foundation. We've just started the process, and we're going to be moving the legacy of our work, which has been particularly focused around a rights-based approach, a faith-sensitive approach to making sure Muslim women, children and families have access to support, services, information that they needed. I'm currently working at an organization, a brilliant organization called Women Connect First. They have an advocacy service within that structure. So what we'll be doing is that element of the work will probably over time transfer over there. But in terms of how it came about, it literally started off in my front room with a bunch of local women who were really keen to make sure that there was some support for particularly South Asian women. It then moved to a space in an office not far from where I live. And thanks to, and I'll be forever grateful to some of the women who stayed with me throughout and still support me in particular, and I'll name them because they're worthy of being named. Actually brings a tear to my eye, because it's not easy standing up in the community to stand up for someone's rights. So you don't even know these people, but they come to you for help and you help them. But in particular, one of the ladies was Seda Chowdhury, and she remains a very, very close friend of mine. And she really took the shoulder and the burden of taking that responsibility and making sure the door was open, the phones were answered, and that it was almost like giving unconditional support to women and girls that desperately needed it.
Brilliant, brilliant. And that you're still doing now, and like you said, the legacy of Henna Foundation will carry on into the new organisation.
It will carry on in just a different way. It will merge into a larger organisation.
Brilliant. And just in terms of breaking it down, so specifically, what exactly do you do in terms of like you said, you make sure that people or women from the South Asian community or Muslims, they have access to certain things, etc. How would somebody approach your organisation, and what kind of sort of help, or on a very ground level, what is it that you actually provide?
So as I said, at the moment, it's very ad hoc because it's because we are folding. But we're still getting calls and emails and messages asking for advice, and the advice could be something like somebody was forced out of a relationship because of blackmail. Okay. And it was a marriage scenario, but certain things happened where this woman had to leave the relationship because it wasn't safe for her. And unfortunately, there was nowhere for her to go. So she's now desperately looking for emotional support, but also she needs advice in terms of the legal side of it. And she also needs some advice and support from the police. Whether she gets it or not is going to be another matter, but it's something that we'll be helping her with. There are people who come to us because there's been issues with social services. Social services have not really been culturally competent, and when they make their assessments, they make judgments sometimes of a family situation, and they don't unpack what's in the background, and it's very easy to label somebody a mother as a bad mother, and they don't see that there's a
story, there's a circumstance behind it.
Yeah, a whole host of circumstances in the background.
Absolutely.
So, there's all sorts of things that come on. And so we, over the years, have made sure that we've established good relationships with, and even if they're not good relationships, we make connections with local authorities, the points of contacts we have. We go to independent lawyers, different police authorities. When I say police, I'm talking, it's South Wales Police or Metropolitan Police or West Midlands Police. We will make contact on their behalf if that is what they want us to do. And we will support them through that entire process. It's almost like a hand-holding way of making sure that they get their rights.
Yeah, I think that's what a lot of it is. Obviously, I certainly know in my experience in the job that I do, a lot of people don't know their rights. They don't know what they're entitled to and what they can do about a certain scenario, or they can't do about a certain scenario. Now, getting onto the topic at hand, I mean, the sort of tag says importance of human kindness in family breakups. Yeah. Now, you and myself, obviously, given our respective sort of professions, we see this all the time. Now, let's start from sort of basic. Why do you think, in your opinion, there is a lack of human kindness in family breakups? We're asking for more, but why is there a lack at the moment, or why has there always been a lack of human kindness generally?
I think we're quick to run to judgment. Judgments are very easily made. People don't use their apply any emotional intelligence to they don't think, and they open their mouths without realizing that there's a bigger picture to consider. Nobody, when a marriage happens, people tend to enter that marriage with good intentions. Yeah. Sometimes it's not thought through. And when things go horribly wrong, you either, the option is stick at it and in the hope that it'll work out, but at the potential detriment that you might cause some emotional harm to yourself. It's almost like self-infliction. Yeah. But at the cost of, well, I don't want to put anyone's nose out of joint. I don't want to shame anybody. I don't want to cause shame to myself. What are the community going to say?
Yeah.
And because of all those things, you know, it's quick, very quick. People make judgments all too often, and they forget fundamentally.
We see that a lot.
We should be kind, and we just totally forget about it.
But do you think there is an element of, and again, we're going back to what I've discussed previously on the show, there is a community, a family pressure? Because I know certainly in the sort of community that I've worked in and alongside is, as soon as something like this happens, as soon as a marriage breaks up, you will have various people from the family either fall on this side of the fence or that side of the fence, depending on the politics and depending on who's related to who and who owns what and how it's going to be shared. And they think, hang on a minute, I'm going to sort of back this horse instead of this one. But that is more calculated than anything else. It's kind of almost, you know, looking out for self-interest than looking at these two people or looking at what's going on, you know, in the marriage and thinking, can we like salvage this or speak to them? They're kind of just looking after their own sort of interest in this thing that's going on, thinking, well, if I support the boy's dad will be happy with me, and that'll lead to something else further down the line, or, you know, things like that. You know exactly the way the community works.
Yeah. But I mean, you know, look, being of a certain age, doing 30 years of this work, and I didn't think that in 2022, this sort of behavior would still continue.
Oh, it
I
does.
honestly thought that we would have hit a generation where there's a little bit more understanding and recognizing that there are two sides to every coin. Yeah. And when two people and two families come into conflict, it really is, I would say, not wise to draw in other people, but people either do it off their own backs, or they are literally, the door is knocked and sympathy votes are looked for.
Right,
and I
exactly.
say, when that happens, really offer them a cup of tea, offer your understanding, but really that is something for them, the people to work out.
But it's also
it's not for third parties.
I know, but it's also with what intention. That what you said, you get the knock on the door. What intention has the person knocking on the door? What's their intention? You know, have they come to sympathise? Have they come to, you know, sort of say, oh, you know, tell us what's going on and maybe we can resolve this?
But it works both ways.
Or have they come to say, hang on a minute, let's see what's going on here?
Yeah, but it works both ways. You know, say, for example, you have a husband and wife situation, and it could be the wife or it could be the husband, who then goes around knocking on the door of the wider relatives,
All right, Shahien,
and wider friends.
hold that thought. We're going to come back to this husband and wife example, and I think we're onto something here, and we'll see you shortly after the break. We'll see you on the other side. Assalamu alaikum.
Okay, Walaikum salam.
Do you need help with your marriage? Do you suspect infidelity in your marriage? Are you struggling to gain the truth over a matter of concern? Whatever the concern, we're here to try and help. Email us for free support today at marriagematters@britishmuslim.tv.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Marriage Matters with me, Javaid Iqbal. We're still in discussion with Shahien Tajobi. Shahien, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, Shahien, you were telling us the example. You got a husband and a wife, and now I think they're
Yes.
going to go out canvassing for support, as far as I know.
Yes, because you know, having a divorce within the community in that context, you know, the stigma is like a forever, and the blame game starts. And so people will literally, it's almost like, you know, you're canvassing because you need to get elected.
Yes, you need the votes.
And you need the votes.
You need the votes. You
So
need people to stand in your
rather than focusing
thing.
on themselves and their own issues, they will go around. I've seen it all too often.
Yep.
And I think to myself, who are you harming in all of this? Where is the human kindness?
But
Because actually,
but it's, for me, I know what you're saying, and I completely understand and agree. But it's the mentality that persists. See, for them to go out canvassing for votes, which I've seen both in my extended family and obviously within our community and the work that I do, is you just think, hang on a minute, you're still within that sort of books where you think, okay, me and my husband or me and my wife are going to get divorced. I need to now get him, her, him on my side. So I'm going to go out and I'm going to say something. But I know my husband, who's also perhaps my first cousin, second cousin, his dad's going to go out and tell him another story. And this whole machination is designed and it's executed because of certain mentality that still persists and prevails in 2022. Yes. And I think, the key is, how do we break that? How do we get to the point, like you said, like the tagline says, when are we going to get to the point where two people split up and human kindness is at the forefront, whether it's from the parents, whether it's from the mosque, or whether it's from the local community, instead of vilification and name calling and, finger pointing and he's this and she's this and blah, blah, blah. There needs to be that mentality shift within a larger sort of in the larger picture, in the much bigger picture. Yes. And I think that's what's needed.
Yeah. I mean, look, once upon a time we used to talk about divorce and we would commonly say, the woman always gets the blame, which remains the same, to be fair. Yeah. But, in the context of, what we've just explained, what people forget is when they play that game of that family community canvassing, the harm that they cause to themselves and others is immeasurable.
Yeah.
And for me, it's like, look, within Islam, you have a God-given right to choose who you wish to marry, and you have a God-given right to end that marriage.
Absolutely.
Yeah?
Absolutely.
You have nothing to prove, because on the day of judgment, we will answer for our own. Where there is high risk, where there's domestic violence, call in the police. Do whatever needs to be done to make sure that there is no harm and people are protected. If you need to get court orders, you do those things.
That's what they're there for.
That's what they're there for. But when it comes to, thinking about what comes out of my mouth, is it going to harm someone else's relationship within the extended family, or people just don't think, and they regret it afterwards, and you can't bring that back. So why don't you just own the fact that this is your marriage? Yes, there might have been other, things that went on, but that's something that we need to change within our communities. When a marriage is going downwards, deal with it.
But let me ask you this, Shahien. Let me ask you this, and it kind of carries on from exactly what you're just saying. Now, a lot of women, especially women that I've met during sort of my job, is a lot of the time, and I can't fault them for saying this to a degree from their mindset. They say, listen, my husband's my first cousin. He's my auntie's son. I didn't ask for this to happen. I didn't ask to get married to him. My mum arranged it. My dad kind of said, you're doing it. Well, they took me to Pakistan. They got Pakistan, India, Bangladesh. They got me married off. If this has gone south, I'm not going to claim this. It's up to them. This was their doing. They organised this. So in that sense, when you say, they have to think, okay, this is about me and him. But would you agree to say, well, hang on a minute, what about the instigators in all this? What about the architects who actually arranged these marriages and kind of say, right, you are getting married to, Tariq's getting married to Bushra and Shagufta's getting married to Abid and X, Y, Z. And then these kids are just kind of going, how can we own this thing when we didn't want it in the first place? So can you blame, I suppose, the two people in the marriage when they do go out and shout in the community saying nothing to do with me?
Yeah, well, that's those situations still occur, that where you have other people orchestrating marriages. And yes, they absolutely need to own it and take responsibility. But I want to see, because that has happened all too often, and you see the damage that creates. You have, marriage breakups, you have children sometimes seeing their dad, not seeing their dad, sometimes seeing their mum, not seeing their mum. You're not, helping anybody. So you'd think that attitude towards marriage should have come to certainly a certain level of a decrease. It has in some parts of our communities, but unfortunately not enough. And I just think, what do we have to do for that to change?
Education.
Well, I think we've been doing it for, I'm 55
Community
this year.
education, though. See, the thing that what my personal experience tells me is when you have a very closed off community, when you have closed off families, and they're not exposed to X, Y, Z, whatever is sort of perpetrated within that household, within that little tight community, it just gets pushed down generationally. You might get educated in the literal sense of the word. You might go out and you might get yellows and your degrees and your this and your that. But if your mentality is still, well, hang on a minute, I can't marry outside of my caste. I can't marry outside of my village. I can't marry outside of my mum's second cousins and blah, blah. That's the mentality that needs to change. And you're absolutely right, and I completely wholeheartedly agree with you that even now in 2022, we've got third, fourth generation, British, Asian Muslims, and they've still got that mentality. It's completely prevalent.
Yeah, and I say, for those who are listening particularly, that they should look across the board within our communities and look at the faces of certain people who may not be related to them. And if you see sadness in their eyes, particularly in their eyes, they may not be wearing their depression on their sleeve. They may not be walking around with their head down and everything, yeah? But open your eyes and look across the landscape. It's because of this sort of behavior, the sadness that creates. It's almost like a forever sadness.
It is.
We have a life. Allah has given us rights and a power that, for reasons all embedded in behavior expectations, power dynamics of families, we're not allowed within certain sections of our communities to exercise the basic human right, which is to marry of choice. And if that relationship is not good for your health and it's not good for your children,
get out.
Then it's time to think about leaving.
But that I would counter and say you're 100% right in terms of the religion aspect, but 99.99% of that, in my experience, personal experience, is cultural, very little to do with religion. What they do is they use the religion on top of the culture. They almost put they kind of say, listen, I'm your dad, and I'm saying this, and under Islam, you have to listen to your dad. Not thinking, right, the dad's a human being as well. He could very easily make a mistake, and maybe he is. So what they do is to sort of propagate the cultural aspect of it.
Yes.
They put a sheen of religiosity, if you want to call it, on top. They put the masala, for the better word, of religion on top. We will come back to this, Shahien, and we're just going to take a short break, and we're going to break for Maghrib Azan as well. So, inshallah, we'll see you on the other side, and we'll carry on talking to Shahien about these subjects. Take care. We'll see you on this side. Assalamu alaikum.
Do you need help with your marriage? Do you suspect infidelity in your marriage? Are you struggling to gain the truth over a matter of concern? Whatever the concern, we're here to try and help. Email us for free support today at marriagematters@britishmuslim.tv.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Marriage Matters with me, your host, Javaid Iqbal. We're still speaking to Shahien. Shahien, are you there?
I am.
Hi there. Nice to see you again. Right. Let me ask you a pertinent question here, which gets asked a lot of the time. And given your experience and what you do, is there still a stigma to being divorced in our community?
I wish there wasn't, but there absolutely is. Absolutely is.
Right. Tell me more.
And there isn't a week that goes past where someone has come to me with a situation where they're very young women who are divorced, keen to remarry. But they can be as educated as you like, financially stable even, but because of the fact that they've, been divorced, And it might be that they haven't even, the relationship wasn't conceived. The first relationship may not have been conceived either, you know, as in...
It's not been consummated. The marriage not been consummated.
Consummate, that's the right word, yeah.
Yeah.
Hadn't been even consummated. And that might be even common knowledge.
Yeah.
But because she's a talaq aurat, you know, a woman who's had a talaq.
That's not the word I've heard many times, but yeah, I'll take that because talaq shuda is the one we use.
Yeah, talaq shuda, talaq wali, chuti.
Yeah, that I don't like that word. That word that you just used, I won't repeat it because it's the most one of the most disgusting words that my ears have ever had is that word because it has certain connotations to it.
Yeah.
See, talaq shuda is fine. You've got talaq, your talaq shuda.
Yeah.
That word, the CH word that you just used, that for anybody who doesn't understand, you know, Urdu or Punjabi watching, it basically means someone who's been let go of. So the connotation is that she didn't get the divorce. The husband let her go. Even if it's common knowledge that she's the one who applied for the divorce and she's the one who left the husband, it still reverts back to the patriarchal system where it says he let her go. She's a CH. She's a, you know.
Yes.
I people still use that word to this day. And again, it goes back to that mentality issue. They've still got this mentality. They've still got this thing of not looking, like you said, not looking at things the way they're meant to be looked at. But sorry, I just got sidetracked and had a bit of a moment. Carry on.
They're not viewed, unfortunately, for their true value as young women.
Why is that then? Why do you think that is?
It's because of the perception that people have in the community. Because of that, it's almost like secondhand goods. It's an awful thing to say.
Right,
awful,
a bloke gets divorced. Is he secondhand goods? Asian young man, young Muslim man, 22, 23, quite handsome, looks a bit like me, and he basically gets divorced. Is he secondhand? Am I secondhand goods? I'm probably fourth hand, to be honest, but yeah, you're secondhand goods.
They don't see it that way.
Now, why?
He could have a criminal record. He could even have a criminal record. Yes? And it's still deemed as okay.
Why this? I know the answer, but I'm asking for your personal opinion as to why this double standard, this two-track, two-tier system that exists still prevails within our community in terms of the way we look at divorced women and the way we look at divorced men. And
I think
it doesn't matter.
There is the patriarchy is strong. Patriarchy is alive and kicking. And a bit like, you know, sometimes, you know, you will have heard it as well when people say white is right, you know?
Yeah.
It's a bit like, that's the example the only example I can think of. Although white is not right, there's this idea that
it's the way it is now.
It's okay.
It's the way it is.
It's fine. It's a man. He may have even divorced twice over, or he might even still have two wives.
Yeah, I've seen that. Now here's but this is the other thing, and this is the bit I want your personal experience and knowledge, being a Pakistani British Muslim woman, and that's the key here. Is a lot of these tropes, a lot of these caricatures, a lot of these stereotypes, in my experience, the perpetrators tend to be the women. See, a woman will use the CH word on another woman. A woman will say, she's secondhand goods, she's been divorced. He's been divorced, but it doesn't matter. Blokes get divorced. You know, jails were invented for blokes. You know, I've heard someone actually say that. You know, someone asked, why is your son gone to jail? You know, the jails were invented for blokes. Of course blokes are going to go there. But my question to you is why are these things, a lot of the time in personal experience, and probably yourself as well, why are they perpetrated by women when it should be the woman standing up for another woman, or a woman standing up for a divorced woman's rights? They're the ones pushing them down.
Well, I would say the simplest way for me to put it, I think in some sections of our community, there's a complete bankruptcy of human kindness.
Yeah, empathy.
Call it what you like, however you want.
Doesn't exist.
For me, human kindness has to be the center of who we are. And when we, even when we're in a bad mood and we say something, sometimes we're human, we make mistakes, but there is always a way of healing that relationship. Yeah.
But would you say it's a generational thing as well? See, I know women in the early 80s, like my aunties who I've grown up with, and other aunties and stuff, and because they grew up in a certain generation and a certain mindset, that's just been, and because they haven't really grown up mentally. When I say they haven't grown up mentally, they haven't seen anything apart from what they were shown in the last 30, 40, 50 years that they've been in this country, which has been a very small segment of community and community at large, even in England. So the sort of perceptions and the everything they've got in their head, that's just been, it's going to kind of been just pushed along for the last 40, 50 years without that actually being sort of moved or challenged. And that's what they're teaching the younger children. Now, but is that a generational thing, or is it something else here? Is there something else going on?
No, I think, look, it's a bit like somebody who's had a sheltered life. They will have a very closed vision of the world because they live in their bubble. So I don't think it's a generational thing. I think this continues amongst young women as well. It all depends on, how open their world has been.
Yeah.
How much space has been opened up for them to communicate and see beyond, the doorstep of their relatives even. And I think it does depend on where you live as well.
Absolutely.
It makes a big
Absolutely.
difference. So for example, if you're in Pakistan, I think if you're in Islamabad, in Lahore, in Karachi, the worldview there is slightly different to if you go into the local village or, Gira, etc. It's going to be different. And it's a bit like living in Wales. You live in the capital city of Wales, even white Welsh people, and then you compare white Welsh people from the valleys, there are social differences.
Absolutely, there's going to be.
There's going to be differences. So the same would apply within our community. So if I'm Sparkbrook, Birmingham, and haven't gone past Sparkbrook, and my social circle remains that small.
Yeah.
And that's how I'm going to behave. But behavior perpetuates behavior. If you behave one way, it will carry on continuing that way.
How do we change this?
If you don't correct it, then it just continues.
But how, Asians, and I use that word quite loosely, we've been in this country since the majority of the time since the early to mid 50s. So nigh on 70 years, over 70 years, we've been here. How are we going to, if we haven't, maybe I'm being a little bit pessimistic, but if we haven't changed that mindset and assimilated in the last 70 years, what is it going to take for us to change this mindset that we've got that still perpetuates itself today?
Well, that's why I keep going on about human kindness, yeah? Because if you're not kind to somebody,
how do you know to be kind, though? This is my question, though, Shahien. How do you know to be kind when the only thing you know is one way of thinking? Because, as we said, if that's the only thing you know, like I know for a fact, I have certain relatives and the community at large, when a woman gets her talaq, even I will say my mum, because she's 80-something, she'll say, oh, so-and-so's daughter's got talaq. We're going to go there to give our condolences. Right? Because they've been doing that in Pakistan for the last number of years. She doesn't know any different. Her friends don't know any different. They've never been taught any different. So what I'm saying is sometimes there's no alternative to what is in front of you. You've just got this one thing and you're going, okay, this is what I know. This is what my mum did. This is what her grandma did. This is what my great-grandma did. I'm doing the same. So sometimes it's not, I don't think it's a lack of human kindness. My counter-argument is that sometimes it's not the lack of human kindness. It's deliberately, they're not deliberately not being kind. They just don't know another way. But my question is how are we going to change that 70 to 75 years after the immigration experience, after this experiment? I think
the only thing in that situation is, like you said, you keep talking to your mum. Yeah.
I've tried.
And unfortunately, we lost our mum 10 years ago.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, and I would say, as a woman in her 60s, our mother, God bless her, she started to change in a more positive way.
Yeah.
So the things that you've described was something that maybe my mum and her friends would have done in the 90s, But
They change. They change, but they're still that. Like my mum now, like me, without getting too personal, me and all my siblings, bar one, we all, married of our own choices. I've got nieces and nephew, and they're married of their own choices. My mum's really happy, and she's had no issues with anybody, anything like that. But occasionally, when they're in their circle and they're in that community, because again, that community pressure, the hold that this community has over an individual can be quite severe, and that's when sometimes the old sort of stereotypes and the older mentality begins to sort of come out again. There's a resurgence of that, where they kind of go, okay, I'm with so and so, and I'm with so and so. I need to act in a certain way to kind of fit in within where I am. But you're right, there can be a growth, but I think there needs to be a lot more, and there needs to be a generational shift, because obviously, like I said, my mum's in her mid to late 80s now. We need the younger generation to do that. Shahien, stay right there. We are going to be back after the break, and we're going to carry on speaking to Shahien about is there shame, stigma in divorce. Stay tuned. We'll see you on the other side. Take care of yourselves. Assalamu alaikum.
Do you need help with your marriage? Do you suspect infidelity in your marriage? Are you struggling to gain the truth over a matter of concern? Whatever the concern, we're here to try and help. Email us for free support today at marriagematters@britishmuslim.tv.
Assalamu alaikum, and welcome back to the last segment of Marriage Matters with me, Javaid Iqbal. We're still speaking to Shahien. We're having an absolutely barnstorming discussion about a multitude of things, mainly in this segment about divorce and why there's still shame and stigma, and whether that shame and stigma, which it is, gender-based, and the differentiations between a man being divorced in our community and a woman being divorced in our community. Now, there is this disparity, I think, is that's the lightest word I can use. There's a slight disparity between men and women getting divorced. How are we going to bridge that gap? How are we going to bridge that gap?
I honestly have no idea. I'm so busy firefighting on a daily basis. Yeah.
But do you think if we fought that, if we got that right, we wouldn't have to fight the fires? See, for me, it's all about the root of the problem sometimes. If you get rid of the root, you won't have to fight fires about not being married legally, which was just speaking about now in the interval. You're not married legally, about sort of arranged marriages and staying in marriages that aren't X, Y, Z. Basically this gender disparity that we've got, if we level that out, then a lot of these fires won't be there in the first place. Yeah.
I think if there was, although Islam gives women equal rights and all of this, we know this. We don't need to be, I don't need to educate anybody on this. But I think within the context of our communities and our families, I don't see that transpiring in reality. So the value of a girl child, a value of a woman is not equal to the value of a man.
That's sad.
And I remember attending a rather large Muslim gathering, which had 97% men, and there was a handful of us women. And I had to get up when there was Q&A, and I said, I'm really disturbed at the fact that we're here in a place like London, having a national conference. The focus is Muslim families, and it was Islamophobia, etc. And I said, so where are the women? And I said, and remember, I literally pointed like this. I said, none of you would be here if it wasn't for a woman.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's the reality of life. It's the reality of biology.
The woman is the one that carries the fetus. The baby has the child. Yes, of course, without the man, that wouldn't happen either. But they would not have given breath into this world without their mothers.
100%.
And they all kind of like looked, and I thought, I don't care what they think of me. I have to say this. So, when that happens in public spaces, and no one bats an eyelid, and it takes a woman to remind them of this. So then you look in the family context. So you work it out for yourself. So maybe it's time in terms of seeing both men and women as equals. Maybe then that might change. I don't know.
Yeah, it's just getting.
I'm clutching at straws.
I know. I mean, I'm with you. I'm in the same boat, because how do you get there? Because, like you said, and again, you know, without, you know, going over all sort of, you know, treading all steps, is Islam's given everything. It's there. It's written. It's in black and white. You could quote hadith after hadith. You can look in the Quran. You know, the status of women, the sort of the level that a woman is treated as, etc. You know, in terms of absolutely everything. The Prophet, in their own lifetime, peace be upon them, in their own lifetime, what they said about women, the way he treated his wives, his daughters, etc. Our issue in our community is the cultural sort of imbalance to religion has always been there. So if it comes between culture and religion, in my experience, culture will win. And I've sat with old people, and they've what I call pretend liberals, where, you know, someone will say, "Oh no, my daughter can marry anybody as long as they're Muslim." And I'll say, "Is that fact?" They'll say, "It's fact." I'll say, "Well, what if they got married to?" And I'll mention a caste, knowing full well it's going to trigger them. Yes, went, "Oh, how dare you? How dare you say that?" And I'm like, no. You know, they're still Muslims. They just belong to this caste, which I've just mentioned. No. You're stupid, and you're using daft examples. So it's very easy saying, "Oh, we're all Muslims and we believe in Islam and we believe in the teachings and we're going to follow in the Quran and Sunnah." Doing it, that's the hard part. And here's the thing, and we had this discussion earlier. The men are not going to do anything because it's tilted in our favour, quite frankly. It's a patriarchal society. It's tilted this way. So if you're, and when I say you, I mean, like, you know, women, female species are looking at the men to do anything to, you know, even that imbalance out, it's not in their interest. That's just me being frank. It's not in their interest. Because just like you said, when you said to them 97% of men that you're a little bit disturbed, that they knew there were 97% of the men were there. They knew, you know, they're like, look left, look right. Everybody's got a beard and a tash and a mosque on and in front and beard. They know, but they're quite happy with that status quo. Giving it lip service is fine. You can say, listen, yeah, it's like this and it's like that, X, Y, Z. Doing it, that's the hard part. And it's getting people to do it. Getting people to actually turn around and say, you know, you need to let go of these old tropes you've got. You've got to let go of these old systems. You've got to get rid of, you know, what we call, you've heard the term, you know, brotherly system, as they call it as well, which is casteism, pretty much, you know. And, you know, that's quite prevalent up north. You might have heard it during the election cycles and stuff like that.
Totally.
But it's 2022. You know, it's not, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. I mean, one of my very, very, very close friends, I've known him like nearly 30 years now, probably 30 years, actually, he's probably watching. His family, we call them the United Colours of Benetton. Literally, that's what we call them. Because they're all Muslim, but they've got Chinese, a French Vietnamese, an Algerian, a white revert. They've got and it's beautiful. And they're all Muslim. They don't care that he's a caste or she's a caste. They don't give a monkeys. You know, and this is like we're talking first or second generation Muslims here. And everybody just gets on. And we need to get out of that happiness and human kindness. Human kindness.
Yes, exactly. So, you know, it's interesting because, you know, I come from a family where once upon a time, marriage could only happen to within our circle if you were marrying a Pathan and of a certain, if you're Khan Khail or Jan Khazay or whatever, if you were that, then you can marry into that, vice versa.
So the like pool is about that big?
Absolutely, yeah, especially living, you know, in South Wales, and then the rest of the world is up north. And anyway, but now, I mean, my family is a great example. You know, we have a great mix, and I would say, shukr alhamdulillah, you know, you can see the happiness in the eyes of the children that come from those marriages. And I say to those elders who are listening, you know, the happiness in the eyes of children and the happiness in the eyes of the husband and the wife, surely they are your children, and surely that is right.
What will people say? What will society say?
Is that more important, or is it the happiness of your children?
Now, that's a pertinent question you asked, though, because I guarantee you The fake liberals out there, they'll say, oh, no. Want my children, want my daughter, and that's what we want to go for. Reality is, they're kind of going, I was complaining and talking about the daughter who lives at number 32 down the road and that she married of her own choice. Yeah. And now my daughter's gone and done the same thing. And I'm going to have to see her, or I'm going to have to see him. And it's that society cycle. It starts perpetuating again. It starts gathering momentum again. They need to break it. And I always say it takes one. It just takes one person to break it and another person to accept that breaking it was okay. I've seen many people, second generation, third generation, they come from families where you thought this cycle is never going to break. Everybody's married to their first cousin. Some are married to their first cousin both ways. They're like, you're going, whoa, you can't get any deeper than that. It's a little bit crazy. And then it takes that one person to break it. And then if the parents accept it and they look, like you said, they look at the happiness of the child and go, you know what, this is actually okay. It's not that bad. That's all it's that, that's one spark. One spark can create a complete revolution.
Yeah. I mean, look, for us as Muslims, the Day of Judgment is something that we commonly talk about. We can drop it in a conversation that we have a concern. What am I going to say on the Day of Judgment? I say it all the time to myself, and I say it amongst people. I say it amongst, even if I'm working with somebody, and there's a situation of conflict, and I can see someone is really in a bad position, in terms of their mental health, potentially self-harming, because I can see the signs, or I'm worried they might go and do something. And if there's another family member that I am in contact with relating to this, I'm constantly reminding them, think about the Day of Judgment. Absolutely. Because it's you not supporting that person, not being there, not being kind. Think about your role. So all those elders, or all those who have copycatted the behavior of their elders, think about your Day of Judgment.
Yeah.
Is your conscience clear? And
it's whether they've got that foresight. It's whether they can think that far ahead. And the ones that can are usually saved. They're the ones who do have the human kindness. They're the ones who do have empathy. They're the ones who do respect the wishes and feelings of the other. But the ones that don't, and only thinking about here and the now, and what is auntie who lives down the road going to say, or my cousin who's 3,000 miles that way in a different land speaks different, what they're going to say, they're the ones who can only think this far ahead. And the ones who think about the Akhirah and the ones that think about Yawm al-Qiyamah, they're the ones that are going to succeed. They're the ones who are going to have that heart to go, what, the world's a bigger place.
Yeah.
It's fine.
And I know we haven't got the time for it now because I can see the clock from here. It's about 3 minutes left, I think. I know we've talked about it during the day. And I know some people might think, what's human kindness got to do with it? Actually, human kindness has everything to do with it, because I think it's one of the tools and the solutions to,
it's the basic.
Trying to get that change and reminding people of our, obligation to the Day of Judgment and stuff. But what I will say to men and women, but particularly men, those who are using social media platforms and the apps, marriage apps, etc.
Be careful.
Who are putting themselves out there, making themselves available, and they're not actually available, they're actually married. Think about the harm that you are causing.
Shahien, we're going to have to unfortunately wrap it up there. I will have you back, Shahien, I think. I can openly say that. We will continue this conversation another time. You guys look after yourselves. Inshallah, we'll see you next week. Take care of yourselves. Assalamu alaikum.
Do you need help with your marriage? Do you suspect infidelity in your marriage? Are you struggling to gain the truth over a matter of concern? Whatever the concern, we're here to try and help. Email us for free support today at marriagematters@britishmuslim.tv.